Bryan J.L. Glass's Dark Spaces. Part 1, Stratan Dreams. Book 1, Desolation's Tears. Read by the author. Chapter 12, Limited Options. Once outside, Talitha ran. The streets were glazed with ice, but she handled all the natural elements with a poise and skill superior to her human counterparts, just as her kind had been designed. She could run for days if she had to. Thankfully, the hangar bay and adjoining office and living quarters for Dante, Stokes & Son Shipping was only 1.5 kilometers away. Talitha wanted to put as much distance between herself and the edge as quickly as she could. The commercial ports were on the opposite side of Redemption from the land barge district, and conveniently adjacent to the larger spaceport to the north. Her breath steamed in the cold air more effusively than usual, but otherwise no one would have guessed Talitha had just crossed the city on foot in under 10 minutes. The western side of Redemption sported dozens of commercial hangars arrayed in a sprawling grid 3 times the landmass of the city itself. Nearly all were embedded underground, with only their uppermost floors and retractable rooftops jutting up 1 or 2 stories above the ice. Unless a freighter was coming or going, Talitha had always felt a curious serenity out here, unlike in the heart of Redemption proper. All the hustle and bustle were beneath the surface, the antithesis of the towering land barges when that industrial fleet was dry-docked en masse, creating whistling canyons between the towering hulks. Talitha had escorted her friend Veslin back here at least 12 times whenever the more grizzled woman had drunk herself beyond her capacity to walk, or sometimes even stand on her own. It wasn't Talitha's place to judge. She'd never met the man, but Veslin's beau was the surviving son in the signage, Dante, Stokes & Son. And being named for the father made him a Dante too. But the freighter that was usually berthed in the docking bay whenever Dante didn't have her out on a shipping run, the Lucky Strike, was all Veslin's. With the front shutter still raised, Talitha could see that the interior lights were on. She rang the bell and heard the distant klaxon reverberating from deep in the hangar bay. Talitha had learned the distinct difference in that sound between when the freighter was docked or when the bay was empty. The hollow reverb indicated Dante definitely had the Lucky Strike out on a job. That meant Veslin should be inside, answering the door any moment now and letting Talitha know how soon Dante would be back so she could book her emergency passage. Talitha no longer felt safe going through the official spaceport with its customs and security. There were 3 dead flashguard assassins, with her name, image, and record attached. She already knew her cubicle apartment and go bag were lost beyond recovery. No one responded to the bell. Talitha tapped on the door with her fist by instinct. No answer. She pressed the entry button, not expecting it to work. The hydraulics hissed, and the door opened. A blast of warm air struck Talitha in the face. "Veslin," she called within. Silence. Talitha stepped inside. Amongst the assorted maintenance gear scattered about the standard foyer, some pieces easily identified as a generation old and rusted out, shared space with other bits still in their unopened packaging. There sat young Tiff's hoverbike on its retractable stand. Like its military counterpart, It didn't need wheels or treads, but skimmed over the ice at speeds nothing but another hoverbike could match. The kid loved it. Talitha passed through to the office and heard a low voice coming from the formal living quarters beyond. It was Tiff's. She was a waif Veslin had taken off the streets back when the captain was doing business in some other stratum. Talitha couldn't remember which. She was a good kid, going on 14 years old by Stratan standard years. Talitha followed the gentle voice to find Veslin slumped in a chair in one of the hangar's many workshops. One bottle lay empty on the floor by her feet, next to a broken glass. A second bottle was nearly empty, cradled one-handed in her lap. Veslin had looked better. She'd been crying and looked ready to deliver a fresh round at the slightest provocation. By human standards, she was only approaching middle age, and Talitha often considered her brown skin to be flawless and beautiful. Tiff appeared a pale ghost in comparison, with short tasseled blonde hair and a frame that looked like it might snap in a sudden gust of wind. The girl had ditched the ever-present tool belt she was typically never seen without. She knelt by the older woman, her de facto mother figure, and tried to get Veslin to rise. To a bed, a more comfortable chair, anywhere but where the bottles were. The image broke Talitha's heart, but she needed the lucky strike. Her freedom depended on it. Veslin, she broached. It's Tal. I'm sorry, but I need to know when Dante's due back with the ship. Veslin just continued to stare ahead at nothing. Tiff's lower lip began to quiver. Her eyes receded back in their sockets as she squinted back tears of her own. Talitha asked, Tiff, what's wrong? What's happened? A tear broke from Tiff's eyelid as she looked up. It's Dante. Talitha connected the dots instantly as only she could. That morning's expedition out onto the ice, followed by Veslin most likely receiving the news a few hours later, only to respond to it by trying to drink her pain away. Was that Dante's pod? Talitha asked, already knowing the answer. Captain Veslin Troskin, too drunk to fly, finally let the dam break and the tears burst forth. He's gone, she cried. My Dante's gone. This has been Bryan J.L. Glass's Dark Spaces. Book 1, Desolation's Tears. Read by the author. Audio and video production by A.J. Blackburn. Original music composed and performed by Frankie Caffrey. Bryan J.L. Glass's Dark Spaces and BJLG's Dark Spaces are copyright 2022 by Bryan J.L. Glass.